Good evening, all, and welcome back to Dark Fears. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed heart of Pennsylvania, through its forgotten corners and isolated small towns buried beneath forests, coal hills, and endless back roads, places where help does not reach. Here, 7 of the most disturbing, real, and terrifying true horror stories have emerged, accounts that will make you question what truly survives beyond the last streetlight. These are not legends or campfire tales. These are real, documented encounters from ordinary people. From abandoned farmhouses to basements hiding unspeakable secrets. From disappearances that defy explanation to things seen moving where nothing should live. Tonight, you will hear horrors that refuse to stay buried. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Now, let us step into the shadows of Pennsylvania, where civilization ends and terror begins. My name is Ethan Miller, and this happened when I was 29, after I moved back to my hometown in rural western Pennsylvania. I didn't return because I wanted to. I returned because my father died, and someone had to sell the old house sitting alone near the abandoned coal hollow. The town barely existed anymore. One gas station, one bar, and miles of trees swallowing everything else. People avoided the hollow, not out of superstition, but habit. Like avoiding a broken step you learned could collapse under your weight. My goal was simple: clean the house, list it, leave. But the first night, as I stood on the porch listening to the wind roll through the trees, I noticed something wrong. The woods weren't loud like they should have been. No insects, no owls, just silence, and the faint sound of something breathing from the direction of the hollow. I told myself it was stress. Grief plays tricks on the mind. That lie lasted exactly one night. The next morning, I asked around town about the coal hollow. At the gas station, the clerk, a thin man named Ron with nicotine-stained fingers, froze when I mentioned it. He didn't ask why I was curious. He just shook his head slowly, like someone remembering a bad dream. "Nothing down there," he said. "Nothing you want." At the bar that night, I pushed harder. A woman named Lydia, who'd lived there her whole life, finally told me the truth in a low voice. Years ago, a man named Caleb Rourke worked the mines until a collapse sealed him underground. The company declared him dead. No body was ever recovered. After that, people started seeing someone walking near the hollow at night. Tall, hunched, coated in black dust. Animals went missing. Dogs refused to go near the trees. "What happened to him?" I asked. Lydia looked straight at me and said, "Whatever came back wasn't a man anymore." That night, the breathing returned. Closer this time. I tried to keep myself busy during the day, telling myself that exhaustion was feeding my imagination. I cleaned my father's bedroom, boxed up old photographs, and avoided the windows that faced the hollow. Still, no matter where I stood in the house, I felt watched, like something was waiting patiently for night to return. By evening, clouds rolled in low and heavy, pressing the sky down until the forest looked crushed beneath it. When darkness fell, the breathing came back. It wasn't loud. That was the worst part. Slow, steady, deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was out there didn't need to rush. I grabbed a flashlight and stood at the back door, my hands shaking on the handle. I told myself I wouldn't step outside. I just needed proof. The beam cut through the trees and landed on the edge of the coal hollow. The ground there was disturbed. Fresh footprints pressed deep into the mud. They were far too large to belong to any normal man, and they led straight toward my house. Sleep became impossible after that. Every sound felt amplified, The creak of the floorboards, the whisper of wind through the walls, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Around 2 a.m., I heard something new. Footsteps. Slow, dragging steps circling the house. I held my breath as they stopped beneath my bedroom window. The breathing was directly below me now, thick and wet, like air being forced through damaged lungs. I wanted to scream, but fear locked my throat. Then the smell hit me. Rotting earth, rusted metal, old coal dust, sharp enough to burn the inside of my nose. The footsteps moved toward the front porch. Wood groaned under a sudden, heavy weight. Something leaned against the door, testing it. I watched the handle turn, just slightly, before stopping. A deep voice whispered my name. It didn't sound angry. It sounded familiar. That was when I realized this thing didn't just know the house. It knew my father. The next morning, I confronted the truth I'd been avoiding. My father had never warned me about the hollow, but he had prepared for something. In the basement, hidden behind old shelves, I found locks installed from the inside. Heavy ones, too heavy for pests, too deliberate for coincidence. There were journals too, stacked in a rusted toolbox. My father's handwriting grew more frantic with each entry. He wrote about night watches, about lights seen moving in the hollow, about a man who came closer every year. One line froze me in place. It remembers the mine. It remembers us. According to the last entry, my father believed Caleb Rourke didn't die underground. He believed the hollow changed him, trapped him between something human and something that belonged to the earth itself. That night, the power went out. As the house fell into darkness, I heard the basement door creak open on its own, followed by slow footsteps climbing the stairs. I barricaded myself in the living room, gripping a fireplace poker like it could save me. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. Silence followed, long enough for hope to creep in. Then the whisper returned. Not my name this time, my father's. Over and over, spoken with a voice that sounded like gravel dragged through a throat. The door frame darkened as something tall blocked the faint moonlight behind it. I could see the outline of a man, but stretched wrong, shoulders bent at impossible angles. I forced myself to speak, demanding to know what it wanted. The response came instantly. Home, it said. That single word carried decades of loss and hunger. I understood then that it wasn't hunting me. It was searching for someone who remembered it as human. The floorboards creaked as it stepped forward. I swung the poker blindly, hitting nothing but cold air. When the light suddenly flickered back on, the room was empty. But the front door stood wide open, leading straight toward the coal hollow. I barricaded myself in the living room, gripping a fireplace poker like it could save me. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. Silence followed, long enough for hope to creep in. Then the whisper returned. Not my name this time. My father's, over and over, spoken with a voice that sounded like gravel dragged through a throat. The door frame darkened as something tall blocked the faint moonlight behind it. I could see the outline of a man, but stretched wrong, shoulders bent at impossible angles. I forced myself to speak, demanding to know what it wanted. The response came instantly. Home, it said. That single word carried decades of loss and hunger. I understood then that it wasn't hunting me. It was searching for someone who remembered it as human. The floorboards creaked as it stepped forward. I swung the poker blindly, hitting nothing but cold air. When the lights suddenly flickered back on, the room was empty. But the front door stood wide open, leading straight toward the coal hollow. I stumbled backward, my heel slipping on loose gravel as the ground shifted beneath me. The hollow groaned, deep, low, and alive. The figure didn't chase me. It didn't need to. Behind it, the mine entrance began to open, not collapsing, but moving, as if the earth itself was making room. I understood then what my father had tried to stop. The hollow wasn't a place. It was a memory, feeding on those who remembered the mine as home. The figure raised one long arm and pointed toward the darkness below. I felt a pull in my chest, a pressure behind my eyes, images flooding my mind that weren't mine. Men trapped underground, screaming until their voices turned into breathless whispers. I screamed and ran, tearing through the trees until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I reached the road, collapsing beneath a flickering streetlight. By morning, the hollow was silent again. But some nights, when the wind shifts, I still hear breathing, waiting for me to come home. I left town the next day without selling the house. I told myself distance would be enough, that whatever lived in the hollow was bound to that land. For a while, that lie almost worked. Weeks passed, then months. I stopped dreaming about black tunnels and collapsing earth. I started breathing easier. Then the letters began. No return address. Just my name written in shaky, dirt-smudged handwriting. Inside each envelope was a single sentence, always the same. The hollow remembers you. I tried calling the gas station. The number was disconnected. Online, I found a short article buried in a local archive. The bar had closed. The town had been declared uninhabited after a sinkhole swallowed part of the road near the hollow. What unsettled me most was the final line of the article. Officials claimed no residents had lived near the hollow for over a decade. That meant my father hadn't been warning me. He had been guarding something until the night he stopped writing. Last winter, I dreamed I was back in the house. The walls breathed. The floor sagged beneath my feet. When I woke, my lungs burned as if I'd been screaming underground. On my bathroom mirror, written in black dust, was a message I hadn't written. Home is open. I sold everything within a week. I keep moving now, never staying in one place long enough to feel settled. But no matter where I go, I sometimes wake to the smell of coal and damp earth. I've stopped opening my mail. I don't answer unknown calls. I don't look toward dark tree lines at night. Because I know the truth my father learned too late. The hollow doesn't chase you. It waits. And one day, when I'm tired enough, or lonely enough, I'm afraid I'll finally hear the breathing close behind me and understand what it truly means to come home. My name is Daniel Harper, and this happened when I was 34. The summer, I took a temporary job as a night caretaker near Briarwood Lake in northeastern Pennsylvania. I wasn't chasing adventure. I was running from a divorce, from debt, from the kind of silence that follows you into every room. Briarwood was the kind of town you'd miss if you blinked. One diner, one church, and a lake so dark and still it looked like a sheet of black glass at night. Locals warned me not to swim after sunset, but they never explained why. They didn't have to. Their eyes did the talking for them. My job was simple. Patrol the lakeside cabins, report trespassers, keep the docks locked after dark. The pay was good because no one lasted long. The first night, as I walked the pier, I noticed something glowing deep beneath the water. Slow, pulsing, like lights breathing under the lake. At first, I assumed the lights came from submerged debris, old fishing gear, maybe reflections from passing cars. But Briarwood had no traffic at night. After sundown, the town went quiet in a way that felt intentional. like everyone agreed to stay inside at the same time. The next evening, I asked Martha, the woman who ran the diner, about the lake. Her hands trembled as she refilled my coffee. She told me the lake hadn't always been there. Decades ago, the town flooded a valley to build a dam. Houses, roads, even a school were swallowed whole. People say you can still see them, she whispered, if the water's calm. That night, the lights returned, closer to the surface. I leaned over the dock, heart pounding, and realized they weren't reflections at all. They were moving, rising slowly. And beneath the glow, I saw shapes, far too large to be fish, drifting upward as if something below had finally noticed me watching. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in my cabin seemed to stretch toward the lake, and the faint hum of the water echoed in my ears. By 2 a.m., I gave up trying. I grabbed a flashlight and walked the pier again, each step creaking against the old wood. The lights had grown stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat just beneath the surface. I shined my flashlight over the water, hoping to identify a logical cause. But all I saw were shapes, blurred and massive, moving rhythmically, as if the lake itself was breathing. I backed away slowly, the boards groaning under my weight. That's when I noticed ripples forming on the far side of the lake, though there was no wind. Something beneath the surface was moving toward me. I froze. The water erupted as a pale, translucent arm, too long to belong to any human, reached above the surface and then sank again, leaving nothing but the eerie, pulsing glow behind. The following morning, I spoke to Sheriff Collings, an older man who had lived in Briarwood all his life. I tried to sound rational, mentioning lights, shapes, and the arm I'd seen. He listened in silence, eyes dark and distant, before finally saying, "People disappear in Briarwood. The lake keeps what it wants." I pressed for details, but he only shook his head. Some things are better left underwater. That night, I decided to stay in the cabin with the porch light on, hoping the glow would keep whatever it was at bay. Hours passed, nothing. I drifted into an uneasy sleep. I woke to the sound of water lapping violently against the shore. My porch light flickered and went out. My heart froze. The lights were back, but this time they weren't beneath the surface. They hovered inches above it, moving with deliberate intent toward the cabin. Shapes began to rise, dozens of them, like drowned souls surfacing to be counted. I grabbed a canoe from the shed, ignoring the uneasy tremor in my hands. If I didn't face whatever haunted the lake, I knew it would only grow bolder. Pushing off into the black water, the lights beneath me pulsed faster, almost matching my heartbeat. Each stroke sent ripples outward, distorting the glow into twisted patterns. As I reached the center of the lake, the water grew impossibly still, like glass that refused to break. The shapes beneath shifted upward, revealing outlines of drowned houses, street signs, and human figures, trapped in a limbo of water and light. I realized the town beneath the lake wasn't gone. It had been preserved, suspended by something far older and darker than anyone in Briarwood could understand. One of the shapes approached closer. Its face was half human, half translucent water, eyes empty but aware. It whispered my name with a voice like rushing water, and I understood. The lake didn't just keep the lost, it wanted witnesses. I tried to paddle back, but the water resisted. It was as if the lake itself had become alive, guiding me deeper toward its secret. The glowing figures surrounded the canoe, circling like predators waiting for permission to strike. I could feel their awareness, as if they were probing my thoughts, testing my fear. Suddenly, one figure reached out. Its hand passed through the water and brushed against my arm. Cold, living, not quite solid. My body froze, my mind flooded with memories that weren't mine. Children laughing in a schoolyard, then screaming as water swallowed them. I realized these were the drowned memories of the town, replaying endlessly beneath the surface. I screamed, slamming my paddle down, breaking through the grip. The figures recoiled, but the pulsing lights followed me, relentless. I knew then that the lake didn't just take lives. It demanded acknowledgement. It wanted its story told, and failure meant joining it. The night air was thick with mist as I forced the canoe toward the shore. Every movement felt sluggish, as if the water itself resisted my escape. The lights beneath the lake pulsed brighter now, synchronized with the heartbeat of the trapped town. Shapes began to rise higher, revealing more detail. Faces of men, women, and children, twisted in expressions of panic and terror. I reached the edge of the lake, and for a moment, hope flared. I could almost touch solid ground. But then one figure separated from the rest. It rose taller, its glowing form towering above me, its features clearer. A man wearing a coal miner's uniform, skin mottled with decay, eyes empty but burning with a strange awareness. It leaned forward and whispered, "Stay." A wave of vertigo hit me. Memories of drowning, of fear, of voices screaming through water crashed over me. I staggered back, gripping the canoe. The shoreline seemed farther away than before, shifting like the lake itself was alive. I screamed at the figure, demanding it leave me alone. For a moment, it paused, unmoving. Then the other shapes surged forward, all glowing eyes fixed on me. The water churned violently, sloshing over the sides of the canoe. My arms ached from paddling, but the lake seemed endless, its bottom stretching farther than my mind could comprehend. I remembered Martha's warning. Some things are better left underwater. Too late, the glow intensified, searing into my vision. The figures whispered in unison, voices layering into a chorus of drowned memories. It was as if the town itself was speaking, pleading, accusing, and dragging me into its watery prison. Then, in a burst of desperation, I leaned over and splashed water toward the largest figure. It recoiled with a scream that sounded like cracking ice. The lake seemed to falter, as if momentarily unsure of its hold over me. I seized the moment and paddled with every ounce of strength I had left. Racing toward the dim lights of the shore, I finally reached the shore, chest burning, arms shaking, and collapsed onto the wet grass. The lights beneath the lake dimmed, but not entirely. They hovered just below the surface, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat that refused to die. I looked back at the water and realized the lake itself seemed alive, watching me, calculating. Martha was waiting on the dock, her eyes wide with recognition and fear. "You shouldn't have come out here," she whispered. "They remember every face they see." I tried to explain what I saw, but the words caught in my throat. The shapes, the submerged town, the glowing miner, it all felt too impossible, too real. That night, sleep refused me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figures rise from the water, reaching for me. And when I opened them, I caught faint movements beneath the calm surface, as if the lake hadn't released me, only allowed me to escape for now. I understood then that Briarwood Lake never forgets. Weeks later, I moved away from Briarwood Lake, but the memory never left me. I can still see the lights beneath the water in my dreams, hear the whispers of drowned voices calling my name. Sometimes, when the wind carries the scent of wet earth and decay, I swear I can feel the pull of the lake again. Martha's warning haunts me. The lake doesn't forgive. It waits. And those who have seen its secret are marked forever. I have kept my story to myself, afraid that telling it might draw attention back to the water, might awaken the town beneath. But I know the truth now. The lake isn't just a body of water. It's a memory, a tomb, and a predator. And one day, it will call again, whether I'm ready or not. I don't go near lakes at night anymore. But some nights, I still dream of Briarwood, glowing, breathing, alive. My name is Rachel Simmons, and this happened when I was 22, driving home from a late shift at a diner in central Pennsylvania. The roads were empty, dark, and flanked by thick woods that seemed to swallow any trace of civilization. I was exhausted, my mind foggy, and the only company I had was the hum of my tires on the asphalt. Around 1 a.m., I saw her, a young woman soaked in rain, standing at the edge of the road with her thumb out, her hair plastered to her face, eyes wide and desperate. I slowed and pulled over, heart hammering. Something about her felt off. "Thank you," she whispered, stepping in without waiting for an invitation. Her voice was soft, but hollow, like wind through dead branches. As soon as she sat, I noticed her eyes, completely black, reflecting nothing. I told myself it was exhaustion, imagining shadows as eyes. But the moment I started the car, I realized she wasn't just a passenger. She knew the road better than I did, better than anyone could. I tried to make conversation, asking where she lived, but she only smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the dark woods. Her presence filled the car, heavy and unnatural, as if the air itself was thicker. Every turn I made, every mile I drove, she seemed to anticipate the road ahead. I began to feel as though the car was no longer mine, like I was a passenger in her world now. Then she spoke, almost casually. "You shouldn't have picked me up." I froze, hands tightening on the wheel. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice trembling. "People who drive this road alone after dark, they don't leave." I laughed nervously, trying to hide my fear. She didn't react. Instead, her black eyes glimmered in the rearview mirror, reflecting something I couldn't name. An endless void, waiting patiently, hungrily, for me to make the next turn. I tried to keep my eyes on the road, forcing myself to breathe normally, but the car seemed to be moving slower than it should. Every turn felt unnatural, as if the road itself was twisting to fit her will. Rain hammered the windshield, streaking the world into long, ghostly lines. I could barely see. Yet somehow, she always knew exactly where the curves were, where the potholes hid beneath the water, where the trees leaned in closer. Then she leaned forward, her face inches from mine, wet hair clinging to her cheeks. Her black eyes burned in the dim dashboard light. "You can't leave this road," she whispered. Her voice was low, echoing inside my skull, vibrating with a force that made my teeth ache. I slammed on the brakes, but the tires didn't respond. The car lurched forward, carrying me deeper into the darkness. My heart was hammering, lungs screaming for air, but my voice caught in my throat. Something in her presence told me I wasn't driving anymore. I was being driven, pulled toward the hollow heart of the forest. I fumbled for my phone, hoping to call someone, anyone. The screen flickered weakly, then went dark, as if the device itself refused to work. The rain intensified, hammering the roof like hundreds of tiny fists. The trees leaned inward, shadows stretching impossibly across the road. Her voice came again, calm, taunting. "There's no help out here." Panic overtook me. I yanked the wheel toward the shoulder, desperate to escape, but the car slid on the wet asphalt, swerving violently. She didn't flinch. She just watched, smiling faintly, as if enjoying my terror. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to run. But the road stretched endlessly ahead, always curving, always leading deeper into the dark forest. Then I noticed movement in the rearview mirror. Shapes emerging from the shadows, blurry and tall, stretching out along the roadside. Figures that should not have existed, walking perfectly upright through the trees. They followed us silently, moving faster than any human could, closing the distance with every heartbeat. I realized with horror, she was leading them to me. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator, praying the tires would grip the wet asphalt. The car skidded violently, fishtailing as if the forest itself resisted my escape. Every turn, every bump, made my stomach lurch. The black-eyed woman sat perfectly still, her gaze fixed ahead, unblinking and unnervingly calm. Her smile widened ever so slightly, like she knew something I didn't. The shapes along the roadside grew closer, moving faster than physics should allow. I could make out their features now. Pale, elongated limbs, distorted faces pressed into expressions of silent hunger. Their eyes were black hollows, reflecting my headlights as if mocking me. I realized then that this was no ordinary hitchhiker. She wasn't just human. She was part of them, or worse, she commanded them. Desperate, I swerved toward a side road, hoping to lose them, but the road seemed endless, bending unnaturally to keep me in their path. My phone remained dead, my screams lost in the rain and wind. The forest around me felt alive, closing in, and I understood that stopping wasn't an option. I forced myself to keep my eyes on the road, though the forest seemed to warp around me. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, more figures appeared, emerging from the dark like echoes of the trees themselves. They weren't walking. They were gliding, floating, yet perfectly synchronized with the curves of the road. I couldn't tell which way was real anymore. The woman spoke again, calm but commanding. "They want to know your fear." Her voice vibrated inside my chest, a low hum that made my teeth ache. I felt something cold wrap around my spine, like the forest had reached inside me. My hands shook on the wheel as my heart thundered. Suddenly, the road ended, not with a curve, but with a sheer drop, fog concealing what lay below. The figures stopped at the edge, waiting. The woman leaned close, whispering, "There's only one way forward." Her black eyes bore into mine, and I realized she wasn't giving a choice. I had no idea how I was going to survive. The drop loomed ahead, shrouded in thick fog that swallowed everything beneath it. I could barely see the ground, or water if there was any. But the edge radiated a palpable sense of death. The black-eyed woman leaned forward, her voice now a hiss. "Do you understand? You can't leave. Not now." My hands shook violently, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. I tried to reverse, to turn around, but the car refused. The tires spun uselessly on the slick asphalt. Every shadow in the fog twisted, forming countless faces pressed into the mist, figures from the roadside now merging into the cliffside, waiting for me to falter. Suddenly, one of them reached out with elongated fingers, brushing the hood of my car. A wave of icy cold shot through me, paralyzing my legs. The woman's smile widened as she whispered, "Fear feeds them, and you've given plenty." I realized in that moment she wasn't leading me. She was feeding the forest, offering my terror to whatever dwelled in its hollow heart. I fumbled for the handbrake, heart hammering, and slammed it down. The car skidded violently, teetering on the edge of the drop, tires spinning on slick asphalt. The figures recoiled slightly, as if my defiance startled them. The woman's black eyes burned into mine, her smile now a predator's grin, full of hunger and amusement. I took a deep, trembling breath and shoved the gear into reverse, spinning backward blindly. The car slid uncontrollably, bouncing over the uneven road. Rain pelted my face through the open window. Behind me, the shadows lunged, but didn't follow. They hesitated as if the cliff's edge contained them. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe until the fog began to thin and the road leveled out. The woman sat silently, her gaze still fixed on me, her smile unchanged. Then, as I approached a familiar junction leading toward the town lights, she simply vanished, leaving the car empty but charged with a cold, lingering presence. Even now, I can't forget her eyes. I ran blindly, my legs shaking, heart pounding, trying to find an exit. Every hallway looked the same, every door led to another room, filled with whispers and shadows. I stumbled into what had once been the nurse's station. Broken chairs and rusted medical trays littered the floor. The whispering intensified, layering over itself until it became a roar inside my skull. Then I saw it. The doctor figure standing at the far end of the room, arms outstretched, beckoning me. The other figures hovered behind him, all their hollow eyes fixed on me. I could feel their collective gaze pressing against my very being, probing, judging, consuming. Panic clawed at my mind, but a small flicker of determination ignited. I refused to become part of their memory. I bolted through the station, diving into a side corridor. The building fought back, walls twisted, ceilings lowered, and the floor became uneven. But somewhere in the distance, I glimpsed faint moonlight through a cracked window. Summoning every ounce of strength, I lunged toward it, ignoring the whispers screaming my name. For the first time, I felt hope. I smashed through the cracked window and tumbled onto the overgrown grounds outside. The whispers faded, but did not disappear entirely, echoing in the wind, haunting the shadows of the trees. I lay there, gasping, soaked in sweat and dirt, and realized I had escaped. For now. When I looked back, the asylum seemed still, silent, almost peaceful from the outside. But I knew better. The building waited, patient, alive, hungering for the next intruder foolish enough to enter. I left my camera behind, fearing that any evidence might draw attention and awaken the presence again. Even years later, I can't pass by abandoned hospitals without feeling it. An oppressive gaze, a whisper calling my name, a memory that refuses to release me. Harrington Asylum didn't just house the dead. It collected the fear of the living, storing it in its walls forever. I warn anyone who dares enter. Some places remember you, and they never let go. My name is Ethan Cole, and this happened when I was 27, working as a freelance photographer, exploring abandoned buildings in Pennsylvania. I'd heard rumors about the old Harrington Asylum, a psychiatric hospital shut down decades ago after a series of mysterious deaths. People said it was haunted, but I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in shadows, in the way light and neglect can twist a place into something unnerving. The asylum loomed at the end of a cracked, overgrown driveway. Its windows were dark, the structure sagging like it had been waiting for someone to enter. I parked my car and grabbed my camera bag. Every step on the gravel seemed amplified in the still night air. Inside, the halls smelled of mildew and rust. Old wheelchairs, cracked tiles, and peeling paint created a maze of silence. But then I started hearing it. Soft whispers, barely audible, echoing through the empty corridors. At first, I thought it was the wind, But the whispers repeated my name, growing clearer with every step. I realized quickly. The asylum remembered everyone who ever entered. I moved deeper into the building, camera in hand, recording everything. The whispers followed me, soft but insistent, calling my full name with an eerie familiarity. Each step echoed like a warning, yet the sound felt layered, as though more than one voice was speaking at once. I reached the main ward, a large room lined with rows of empty beds. Some mattresses were torn, others rotted through, but the air was heavy with a strange, oppressive presence. The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a way that made it impossible to distinguish where one voice ended and another began. Then I saw them, shapes moving at the edge of my vision. Figures in hospital gowns, pale and gaunt, drifting just out of focus. When I turned fully, they vanished. My heart started pounding, and a cold sweat ran down my spine. It became clear that Harrington Asylum didn't just hold memories. It held something alive, something that remembered the pain of everyone who had ever suffered here. And it wanted me to feel it too. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing, shadows, tricks of light, exhaustion. But the air in the ward felt alive, heavy, pressing against my chest. The whispers became voices, distinct and urgent, murmuring secrets I shouldn't know. Don't leave. Stay. We remember you. They hissed, echoing through the long hallways. I stumbled backward toward the central corridor, camera swinging from my hand. Every step brought more whispers, more shapes appearing at the corners of my vision. Some crouched on the floors, others floated near the ceiling, and all of them had eyes. Dark, hollow, staring at me like they could peer straight into my soul. The walls seemed to breathe, groaning as if the building itself were alive. I tried calling out, but my voice faltered in my throat. My camera flickered on and off, catching glimpses of figures closer than I thought possible. A cold hand brushed my shoulder, or maybe it was nothing. But my instincts screamed that something was behind me, just waiting for me to turn. I realized then that Harrington Asylum had never really been abandoned. I forced myself to move forward, each step shaking, the whispers rising in intensity until they became a chorus, pressing into my mind. The shapes multiplied, crowding the edges of my vision, moving unnaturally fast. I stumbled into the treatment rooms, once used for electroshock therapy, now stripped and rusted. The metallic scent of decay filled my nose. One figure stood perfectly still in the center, facing me, wearing an old, torn uniform. Its eyes were hollow black pits, and its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, as if it was smiling without moving. It tilted its head and whispered my name in a voice that sounded both human and not, echoing in every corner of the room. Panic surged, and I bolted for the main exit. But the asylum had other plans. Hallways twisted, doors disappeared, and staircases led to walls. Every attempt to escape brought me back to the same room, the same figure, the same chorus of whispers. It became horrifyingly clear. The asylum wanted me trapped inside, part of its memory forever. I sank to the floor, heart hammering, trying to catch my breath. The whispers grew louder, forming sentences that I couldn't unhear. You belong to us. You see too much. You will stay. The voices weren't just around me. They were inside my head, repeating, overlapping, layering my own thoughts with theirs. I tried to stand, but my legs trembled uncontrollably. I noticed movement in the corner of the room, shadows peeling away from walls, stretching into humanoid forms that approached silently. The light from my flickering camera illuminated glimpses of faces twisted in fear. Mouths open in silent screams, eyes hollow and accusing. They moved closer, their cold presence filling the room, pressing against my chest as if trying to push me into the floor. I clawed at the exit door, pulling it open, but it led to another hallway, one I had never seen before. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, lined with scribbled messages. "We remember. We remember." My pulse raced as I realized I was no longer exploring the asylum. The asylum was exploring me. I ran blindly down the twisting hall, each step echoing like thunder in the empty building. The whispers followed, becoming voices of patients long gone, pleading, threatening, demanding attention. Doors slammed shut behind me, as if the building itself were alive, reshaping to trap me further. A figure darted across the hallway, too fast to be human. My camera caught a brief flash. A nurse in a tattered uniform, skin pallid, eyes black as coal, dragging something that resembled a patient across the floor. The sight made my stomach churn. I stumbled backward, crashing into a row of rusted wheelchairs, the sound echoing like a warning. Then I heard it, louder than all else. The whispers chanting my name in unison, forming a command. Stay, forever. I realized the asylum didn't just haunt the living. It trapped them. And now, it had chosen me as part of its endless memory. Every instinct screamed to escape, yet every hallway, every door, every step led me deeper into its clutches. I reached a large hall, one that looked like a former recreation room. Broken furniture littered the floor, and the ceiling hung in jagged strips, exposing rusted beams above. The whispers became deafening, pounding in my head, each syllable vibrating like nails on my skull. I stumbled forward, heart racing, and saw them. Dozens of figures, floating just above the floor, their black eyes locked on me. One figure stepped forward, a doctor in a stained lab coat, face twisted in fury and grief, mouth moving silently as if issuing some unspoken judgment. My camera trembled in my hand as I raised it, trying to document what I saw. But the figures reacted violently, recoiling and then surging forward, forcing me backward. I backed into a corner, trying to think, trying to breathe, but the hall seemed to stretch endlessly. Reality warped. The floor undulated like water, the ceiling sank closer. The asylum wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it wanted me contained within its memory. I realized with chilling certainty, I was no longer a visitor. I was its prey. I tried to flee, pushing through the spectral crowd, but the figures pressed in from all sides. Each step forward felt like running through water. Their whispers filled every corner of my mind. I reached a stairwell and ran up, praying it would lead me outside, but the stairs twisted unnaturally, spiraling into darkness, never ending. The doctor figure floated closer, stretching impossibly, mouth opening wider, revealing teeth that seemed to glint in the dim light. Behind him, the other figures surged forward, their movements synchronized, silent, inevitable. My breath came in ragged gasps as I realized the asylum could trap me forever, warping space to ensure escape was impossible. Then the whispers shifted, softer, almost coaxing. Join us. Be part of us. Remember. My head spun with the sheer intensity of their presence. I slammed my hands against the stair railing, trying to will the building to let me go. The walls pulsed as if alive, and the floor trembled beneath me. I understood then that Harrington Asylum didn't just house the dead. It consumed the living, piece by piece. I ran blindly, my legs shaking, heart pounding, trying to find an exit. Every hallway looked the same, every door led to another room, filled with whispers and shadows. I stumbled into what had once been the nurse's station. Broken chairs and rusted medical trays littered the floor. The whispering intensified, layering over itself until it became a roar inside my skull. Then I saw it. The doctor figure standing at the far end of the room, arms outstretched, beckoning me. The other figures hovered behind him, all their hollow eyes fixed on me. I could feel their collective gaze pressing against my very being, probing, judging, consuming. Panic clawed at my mind, but a small flicker of determination ignited. I refused to become part of their memory. I bolted through the station, diving into a side corridor. The building fought back, walls twisted, ceilings lowered, and the floor became uneven. But somewhere in the distance, I glimpsed faint moonlight through a cracked window. Summoning every ounce of strength, I lunged toward it, ignoring the whispers screaming my name. For the first time, I felt hope. I smashed through the cracked window and tumbled onto the overgrown grounds outside. The whispers faded, but did not disappear entirely, echoing in the wind, haunting the shadows of the trees. I lay there, gasping, soaked in sweat and dirt, and realized I had escaped. For now. When I looked back, the asylum seemed still, silent, almost peaceful from the outside. But I knew better. The building waited, patient, alive, hungering for the next intruder foolish enough to enter. I left my camera behind, fearing that any evidence might draw attention and awaken the presence again. Even years later, I can't pass by abandoned hospitals without feeling it. An oppressive gaze, a whisper calling my name, a memory that refuses to release me. Harrington Asylum didn't just house the dead. It collected the fear of the living, storing it in its walls forever. I warn anyone who dares enter. Some places remember you, and they never let go. My name is Lena Marshall, and this happened when I was 24, on a weekend trip with friends in rural Pennsylvania. We had rented a cabin deep in the woods, far from any town, to escape the noise and distractions of city life. The forest was dense, the trees towering and ancient, and the air smelled of pine and damp earth. At first, it felt peaceful, a perfect weekend getaway. The first night, as we sat around a small fire outside the cabin, I noticed something odd. Across the clearing, a faint light flickered between the trees, as though another cabin existed. But it shouldn't have. The area was isolated. The rental map showed nothing nearby. My friends dismissed it as someone else camping, but a creeping unease settled in my chest. Later, when I went inside the cabin to grab more firewood, I glanced out the window. The flickering light had moved closer, and the shape of a small cabin now stood perfectly clear in the distance. My stomach sank. It wasn't on any map. It hadn't been there when we arrived. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but the light flickered again, closer this time. My friends laughed nervously, teasing me for overthinking. Yet I couldn't ignore the sense that we weren't alone. Something about the cabin's appearance felt wrong. Its structure seemed warped, too perfect in some ways. Yet the shadows around it didn't behave naturally. That night, I woke to a sound outside, a soft scraping on the wooden walls of our cabin. I froze, straining to hear over the pounding of my own heart. The forest was silent, except for the rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. I got out of bed, heart racing, and peered out the window. The mysterious cabin had moved, or at least it seemed closer. Its windows glowed faintly, but there was no smoke, no sign of life. The forest around it looked darker, denser, as if it had carved its own space into the trees. Something about the way it waited, silent and glowing, made me realize this wasn't a normal cabin. It was watching us. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light or my imagination. My friends were talking about hiking trails, completely unaware, or perhaps unwilling, to see what I had noticed. I scanned the tree line where the mysterious cabin had been, but it was gone. No flicker of light, no sign that anything had been there. I wanted to laugh it off, but the unease in my stomach refused. Later that afternoon, we decided to explore the surrounding woods. Every step felt heavier, as though the forest itself was pressing in on us. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it again. The glowing cabin, now much closer, as if it had moved overnight. My pulse quickened, and I grabbed my friend's arms, trying to point it out. They turned, and for a moment, I swore they saw it. But when they blinked, it was gone. The forest seemed alive, reshaping itself around the cabin. My friends laughed nervously, chalking it up to shadows and imagination. But I could feel it, an intelligence in the trees, guiding that cabin closer. That evening, as darkness fell, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The campfire seemed weak, casting more shadows than light. The forest whispered in the wind, and the flicker of the mysterious cabin appeared again, this time on the edge of the clearing, impossibly close. I froze, gripping my jacket tightly, while my friends still tried to laugh it off. Then came the sound, the slow creak of a door opening. The cabin's windows glowed faintly orange, like someone or something was inside, waiting. My stomach dropped. I wanted to approach, but my instincts screamed at me to run. I stepped back toward our cabin, but the forest seemed to shift. Branches twisted unnaturally, blocking paths, leading me in circles. The glowing cabin's presence was magnetic, pulling me deeper into the woods. Every instinct told me to flee. Yet I couldn't move my feet fast enough. Something about the cabin's glow penetrated my mind, whispering promises and threats I could barely comprehend. By the time night fully descended, I understood. This wasn't just a cabin. It was alive, hunting, patient and intelligent. By the fifth night, none of us slept well. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the cabin sent my heart racing. The glowing cabin never stayed in one place. I would glance at the trees and see it lurking just beyond the shadows, closer each time, as if it were following us, studying us. I convinced my friends to come with me to investigate. We approached the edge of the clearing cautiously, flashlights cutting weak beams through the darkness. The cabin sat there, larger than I remembered, its orange glow almost hypnotic. I stepped forward, drawn to it despite the terror clawing at my mind. My friends hesitated, their fear obvious. The door creaked open on its own, inviting us in. The air that flowed out smelled of damp wood and something metallic, like old blood. I wanted to run, but my legs betrayed me. A low hum filled the clearing, vibrating in my chest, and I realized the cabin wasn't just a structure. It was alive, sentient, and it had decided we were its next victims. We stepped inside reluctantly. The cabin's interior was impossibly small, yet felt endless. Walls pulsated subtly, as if breathing, and the floor warped under our weight. Every surface was perfect, untouched by decay, yet unnerving, as though it existed outside time. I shivered. Then the whispers started. Soft at first, almost seductive. "Stay. Forever. Join us," they murmured, echoing from every corner. My friends froze, fear rooting them in place. A faint glow rose from the floorboards, forming shapes, faces of people who had come before, trapped within the cabin's walls, their mouths open in silent screams. I realized this wasn't a cabin in the forest. It was a predator. a living entity that lured the curious, feeding on their fear until it could trap them inside. The walls seemed to pulse faster as I tried to back away, but the cabin had other plans. It bent space around us, funneling us deeper into its core. I understood then. Escape would not be easy. This was not a place you could leave willingly. The deeper we moved into the cabin, the more impossible it felt. Hallways twisted back on themselves, stairs led to ceilings instead of floors, and doors opened into rooms that shouldn't exist. The orange glow from the windows intensified, and the whispers grew louder, chanting our names like a sinister hymn. My friends clung to each other, trembling, while I felt a cold pull in my chest, as though the cabin were calling me by name, trying to separate me from them. I reached a room filled with mirrors. Each reflection showed my face twisted in fear. But behind me, I could see the cabin itself. Walls pulsating, floorboards writhing like living things, shadows wriggling under the corners. One reflection smiled back at me, even though I hadn't moved. Panic surged through me as I realized the cabin was reading my fear, shaping itself around it, amplifying it. A low rumble vibrated through the walls, and I understood the horrifying truth. The cabin was alive, aware, and it fed on the terror it created. There was no logic, no pattern, only its will, pulling us deeper into its grasp. I tried to pull my friends back, but the cabin resisted, as though the walls themselves had fingers grasping at our arms. The whispers became commands, sharper and more insistent. Stay. Join us. Belong. My vision blurred as the cabin bent reality, corridors looping endlessly, making it impossible to tell which way was out. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the room. A figure taller than any human, shifting shape constantly, eyes glowing like embers. It stopped in front of me, its presence suffocating, and I could feel my own heartbeat sinking to some unnatural rhythm dictated by the cabin. My friends screamed, but their voices sounded distant, muffled, like they were trapped in another dimension. I realized the cabin wasn't just alive. It was conscious, calculating, aware of our every thought, our every move. And now, it was deciding who would survive. My stomach churned with terror as I understood that fleeing wasn't enough. The cabin had already begun selecting its next victims, and we were trapped inside a living nightmare that might never end. The sharp bend of Dead Man's Curve loomed ahead, glowing faintly in the fog like an ominous promise. My cab strained under the stress, wheels screeching against the rails. The ghostly train stayed locked beside me, its spectral passengers pressing ever closer, their hollow eyes unblinking, faces twisted in expressions of endless hunger. I could feel their presence in my bones, a cold weight that threatened to crush me entirely. I wrenched the throttle forward with every ounce of strength I had left, forcing my engine to fight against the invisible grip of the midnight train. The conductor appeared again, eyes blazing like molten fire, his skeletal hand pointing directly at me. The whispers intensified, each syllable vibrating in my skull. Stop, stay, join us. My hands shook, my mind teetered on the edge of panic and despair, but I refused to let the train claim me. The curve approached faster than any logic should allow. But by focusing on the rails, ignoring the screams in my head, I managed to push the cab past the bend. For a fleeting second, it felt as though I had cheated death itself. When I finally cleared the curve, the fog thinned, and the spectral train wavered, fading into the mist. The passengers disappeared one by one, their hollow eyes lingering in my mind long after I couldn't see them anymore. The conductor raised his hand in silent acknowledgement, then dissolved into the darkness. I was alone, trembling, heart hammering, and soaked in cold sweat. The tracks ahead were empty, silent, abandoned once more. Yet the memory of the midnight train, of its passengers and its sentient, malevolent will, remains etched into me. I never spoke of it openly, fearing disbelief or worse, the possibility that even talking about it might draw it back. Years later, every foggy night on rural Pennsylvania tracks, I still feel the tug in my chest, the echo of whispers calling my name. Dead Man's Curve is not just a bend in the tracks. It is a threshold, a predator waiting patiently for the next soul daring enough to cross its path. And if you ever hear the hum of wheels in the fog, pray you are never on its rails. My name is Marcus Bennett, and this happened when I was 29, working the night shift as a railroad engineer in central Pennsylvania. I had been driving freight trains for years, but there was one stretch of track near an abandoned town that gave me an uneasy feeling. A part of the line locals called Dead Man's Curve. Everyone avoided it at night, but I didn't believe in superstition. That is, until the night everything changed. It was past midnight, fog thick across the rails, and the only sound was the rhythmic clack of steel on steel. I glanced ahead and saw lights, dim, flickering, but not like a regular train. As I drew closer, I realized the train was moving against the tracks, silent, its engine making no sound. Its windows glowed a dull orange, and inside, I could see figures slumped in the seats, their faces pale and empty, as if they weren't alive at all. A chill ran down my spine. The train shouldn't exist. It was on a line that had been abandoned for decades. My hands tightened on the controls, heart pounding. Something was very, very wrong. As the ghostly train drew closer, I tried to radio the control center, but all channels were dead. Silence, static, nothing. The train's speed seemed impossible, gliding along the rails as if it were weightless, leaving no noise beyond the soft hum in my chest. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it must be fatigue, but the figures inside became clearer. Faces pressed to the glass, hollow eyes staring directly at me. Then I noticed movement. A figure stood at the far end of the car, slowly turning to face me, hands raised as if to beckon me closer. The train shifted slightly, moving closer to my track, almost matching my speed. My rational mind screamed that this was impossible, yet my instincts screamed louder. Get away! I tried to accelerate, but the freight engine responded sluggishly, as if weighed down by an invisible force. The fog thickened, visibility near zero, and I realized with terror that the train was guiding me into something. A trap that had been waiting for decades on these abandoned rails. The fog thickened around me, wrapping the rails in a suffocating blanket. The ghostly train stayed perfectly aligned with my path, moving impossibly fast, yet eerily silent. Its windows flickered, revealing faces, pale, hollow-eyed men and women, their mouths slightly open in silent screams. Some turned their heads in unison, staring straight at me. My stomach churned, and I struggled to keep the controls steady, hands trembling. Suddenly, the train shifted closer, and I caught sight of a conductor, or what looked like one, standing on the front platform of the spectral train. His uniform was torn and soaked in darkness, but his eyes glowed with a fiery orange light. He raised a hand and beckoned, and the moment I saw him fully, a wave of dread slammed into me, pressing my chest like a physical weight. The controls of my engine resisted. It was as if the ghostly train had extended its influence over mine, bending reality, pushing me toward Dead Man's Curve. I realized then, this train wasn't just abandoned. It hunted those who crossed its tracks at night, feeding on fear and dragging them into its eternal route. I tried to turn the throttle, to outrun the ghostly train. But the controls froze. The train ahead wasn't just on the tracks, it was in my mind, controlling my movements, warping my perception. The world around me twisted. Fog thickened into shapes. The rails seemed to stretch endlessly, and shadows formed humanoid figures that reached toward the cab. I pressed my face to the window, and the spectral passengers stared back, their hollow eyes filled with infinite patience and hunger. One face, closer than the rest, pressed against the glass, lips moving silently as if speaking my name. A low vibration thrummed through my chest, synchronized to the rhythm of the spectral wheels echoing inside my bones. Panic clawed at me, but somewhere deep, a shred of rational thought guided my hands. I yanked the emergency brake, feeling the cab lurch violently. The ghostly train mirrored me, shuddering and pulsing as if aware of my defiance. I knew then the horrifying truth. Dead Man's Curve wasn't just dangerous because of the tracks. It was the point where the midnight train claimed its next victims. The next moments were chaos. My cab trembled violently, as if the rails themselves were shaking with fury. The ghostly train stayed perfectly aligned, its orange glow intensifying, casting the fog in harsh, unnatural light. The spectral passengers seemed to press closer, their hollow eyes locked on mine. I could feel their presence crawling over me, an invisible weight dragging me toward Dead Man's Curve. I tried everything, accelerating, braking, even pulling emergency switches. But nothing responded. The train ahead pulsed with an almost sentient rhythm, vibrating through the rails and into my bones. My friends, if anyone had been here, would have screamed. But the world outside my cab had melted into nothing but fog, shadows, and the unblinking eyes of the dead. Then the conductor appeared again, hovering above the train's engine like a predator. He raised a long skeletal finger pointing directly at me. The whispers grew into a chorus, chanting my name, beckoning me closer, threatening me. I realized this was no accident. Dead Man's Curve was a trap, designed to claim the curious and the reckless, and tonight, it had claimed me as its prey. My heart pounded as I forced myself to focus, desperate to break the hold the midnight train had over me. The fog twisted, forming fleeting images of previous victims. Engineers, passengers, hikers, faces pale, mouths open in silent terror, eyes wide with frozen screams. The vibration in my chest was unbearable, syncing with my heartbeat, amplifying my fear into something physical. I gripped the controls tighter, willing my engine to respond, and for a fleeting second, it did. The cab surged forward, the ghostly train swaying in response. The conductor's fiery eyes locked onto me, furious at my defiance. Behind him, the passengers pressed harder, their forms stretching and twisting unnaturally. Then came the sharp curve ahead, Dead Man's Curve itself. I knew if I didn't act, the train would drag me into it, and the ghostly passengers would claim my soul like all the others. I tightened my grip and braced for the moment, praying for a miracle while feeling the midnight train's malevolent presence surrounding me completely, alive and aware, ready to pull me into oblivion. The moment I hit Dead Man's Curve, everything went wrong. The cab lurched violently, twisting as if the tracks themselves had turned into molten metal. Outside, the ghostly train hovered impossibly close, its orange glow burning through the thick fog. The spectral passengers leaned outward, faces stretched unnaturally, hollow eyes boring into my soul. My vision blurred, ears ringing with a chorus of whispers chanting, "Join us, join us, join us." The conductor appeared again, impossibly tall, hovering above the engine like some wraith from a nightmare. His eyes burned brighter, and I felt an invisible force pressing down on me, bending my body, my engine, even the air itself. My hands shook violently on the throttle, but instinct and terror propelled me forward. I could see the curve ahead, the sharp bend that had claimed countless lives over decades, glowing faintly in the fog as if the rails themselves were alive. I realized with chilling clarity that the midnight train didn't just move on tracks, it controlled them, shaping reality, choosing who would survive. And tonight, it had its sights on me. I gritted my teeth and forced the engine forward, every muscle screaming in protest. The fog thickened, but the curve ahead became clearer, a faint glow marking the path through the nightmare. The ghostly train mirrored my every move, swaying in sync with my engine, almost testing me, almost toying with my fear. The passengers pressed closer, and I could see their hollow eyes filled with hunger. One face leaned against the window nearest me, and I could swear it smiled, showing teeth that glinted faintly in the orange glow. My chest ached as if the ghostly presence had reached inside me, squeezing, probing, feeding on panic. The conductor extended a skeletal hand toward the cab, and the whispers became deafening, vibrating inside my skull. But instinct, sheer desperation, and the need to survive surged through me. I gripped the controls with everything I had left, refusing to let the midnight train claim me. This curve was its domain, but I would fight with every ounce of strength I had. The sharp bend of Dead Man's Curve loomed ahead, glowing faintly in the fog like an ominous promise. My cab strained under the stress, wheels screeching against the rails. The ghostly train stayed locked beside me, its spectral passengers pressing ever closer, their hollow eyes unblinking, faces twisted in expressions of endless hunger. I could feel their presence in my bones, a cold weight that threatened to crush me entirely. I wrenched the throttle forward with every ounce of strength I had left, forcing my engine to fight against the invisible grip of the midnight train. The conductor appeared again, eyes blazing like molten fire, his skeletal hand pointing directly at me. The whispers intensified, each syllable vibrating in my skull. Stop, stay, join us. My hands shook, my mind teetered on the edge of panic and despair, but I refused to let the train claim me. The curve approached faster than any logic should allow. But by focusing on the rails, ignoring the screams in my head, I managed to push the cab past the bend. For a fleeting second, it felt as though I had cheated death itself. When I finally cleared the curve, the fog thinned, and the spectral train wavered, fading into the mist. The passengers disappeared one by one, their hollow eyes lingering in my mind long after I couldn't see them anymore. The conductor raised his hand in silent acknowledgement, then dissolved into the darkness. I was alone, trembling, heart hammering, and soaked in cold sweat. The tracks ahead were empty, silent, abandoned once more. Yet the memory of the midnight train, of its passengers and its sentient, malevolent will, remains etched into me. I never spoke of it openly, fearing disbelief or worse, the possibility that even talking about it might draw it back. Years later, every foggy night on rural Pennsylvania tracks, I still feel the tug in my chest, the echo of whispers calling my name. Dead Man's Curve is not just a bend in the tracks. It is a threshold, a predator waiting patiently for the next soul daring enough to cross its path. And if you ever hear the hum of wheels in the fog, pray you are never on its rails. My name is Tara Hensley, and this happened when I was 19, hiking alone in a remote section of the Pennsylvania wilderness. I had always loved the solitude of the woods, the way the wind whispered through the trees, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the faint scent of moss and pine. But the deeper I went, the heavier the silence became. as if the forest itself was holding its breath. It started subtly, a soft murmur, almost like the wind, but distinctly human. I paused, straining to hear, and the whispering stopped. Shaking my head, I told myself it was my imagination. I pressed on, following a narrow trail that seemed older than any map would suggest. Then, out of nowhere, I heard my name. Tara. I froze. The voice was soft, coaxing, intimate, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air grew colder, and the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches forming jagged silhouettes in the dim light. Something was in the woods with me, something that knew my name, and it was not friendly. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the wind, but the whispers grew louder, now clearly forming words, calling my name repeatedly. Every time I turned, I saw nothing, only gnarled trees and thick underbrush. My heart pounded, adrenaline surging, but a strange compulsion pushed me forward. It was as if the forest itself was guiding me deeper, forcing me towards some unseen destination. The trail narrowed, roots snaking across the path, tripping me repeatedly. Shadows shifted at the edges of my vision, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw movement. Figures just beyond the trees, watching, waiting. The whispers intensified, not only calling my name, but mimicking my thoughts, my fears, even my doubts. Panic rose in my chest. I realized I was no longer hiking through a simple forest. Something ancient and malevolent had noticed me, and it was toying with me, manipulating both my mind and the path I followed. Turning back seemed impossible. The trail behind me had vanished into darkness and fog. The deeper I went, the louder the whispers became. They weren't just calling my name anymore. They were mocking me, repeating my fears, my secrets, twisting them into cruel taunts. Tara, so alone, afraid, lost. The voices hissed, flowing through the trees like living smoke. My skin crawled, every hair standing on end. Branches seemed to reach for me, snagging my jacket and scratching my arms. The forest felt alive, watching, breathing, aware of my every movement. I stumbled over a root and fell to my knees, struggling to steady myself. But the whispers surrounded me now, pressing in from all sides. I could almost see shadows flickering just beyond the trees, moving in patterns that made no sense, twisting impossibly with each heartbeat. I tried to run, but the trail behind me had disappeared entirely. Panic surged as I realized I had no idea where I was. The woods had shifted, rearranged themselves, guiding me deeper into the darkness. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the whispers pulled me forward, and with each step, I felt myself sinking into a nightmare that had been waiting for me. I finally saw it. A faint orange glow between the trees, like lantern light, though there was no fire, no source. The whispers intensified, coaxing me closer, promising safety, but radiating malevolence. I hesitated, heart hammering, but the curiosity and terror combined, pushing me toward it. As I approached, the ground shifted beneath me, uneven, almost pulsing, like the forest itself was breathing. Shadows stretched toward me, forming figures that disappeared whenever I looked directly at them. I realized the whispers weren't random. They were alive, intelligent, responding to my fears, molding reality itself. Every step forward made me feel smaller, weaker, insignificant against whatever presided over these woods. Then I saw faces, hundreds of them, emerging from the mist, human but wrong, pale and twisted, eyes black hollows, mouths moving silently in whispering chants. I stumbled back, nearly falling. But the forest had already closed in behind me. I was trapped. The whispering woods had claimed me as its audience, feeding on my fear, studying my every reaction. And I knew with chilling certainty that it didn't intend to let me leave. I tried to turn away, to run back the way I thought I had come, but the forest resisted. The trail I had followed earlier had vanished entirely, replaced by thick underbrush and shifting shadows that seemed to move as I moved. The whispers escalated. No longer gentle or coaxing, they were urgent, demanding, almost angry. Do not leave. Stay. Belong. Branches snagged at my clothes and hair, the bark rough and sharp against my skin, pulling me deeper into the mist. Shapes darted between the trees, glimpses of human forms with elongated limbs and distorted faces. My mind spun in panic, trying to rationalize, to find an explanation. But every rational thought was swallowed by the oppressive awareness of the forest. Then I heard it. The laughter. Soft, echoing, impossible to locate, as if 100 voices were circling me from every direction at once. It was playful, yet cruel, a predator toying with its prey. I realized the whispering woods weren't just observing. They were actively hunting me, studying my fear, bending the environment around me to trap me in a nightmare with no exit. I stumbled into a clearing, but it wasn't a safe haven. It was worse. The orange glow I had seen before now filled the space, flickering like firelight, yet casting no heat. The ground seemed to pulse beneath my feet, and the trees leaned inward, forming a jagged, suffocating cage. The whispers became a cacophony, layering voices over voices, all chanting my name, recounting my thoughts, predicting my movements before I made them. In the center of the clearing, shadows pooled, forming a massive figure, its shape constantly shifting, neither fully human nor animal. I could feel its gaze on me, heavy, probing, intelligent. The air was thick, suffocating, and each breath I took burned. I realized with a sickening certainty that the forest had lured me here intentionally. It had studied me from the moment I stepped onto the trail, feeding on my curiosity and fear. Now it was time to choose: submit to the forest's will, or fight against an intelligence far beyond my comprehension, knowing that escape might be impossible. The massive shadow figure in the clearing began to move, rippling unnaturally like smoke in the wind. Its shape shifted constantly, alternating between human, animal, and forms that made no sense, defying logic. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, echoing in my skull, forcing my eyes to dart around the clearing, searching for exits that weren't there. My chest burned with panic, and I could feel my legs trembling, almost unable to support me. The entity's gaze found me, and I swear the world tilted. I felt an overwhelming pressure, as if the air itself was trying to push me down, to bend me into the forest's will. It moved closer, or maybe I moved closer, I couldn't tell. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the forest's intelligence anticipated each thought, each movement, bending reality around me. I felt trapped in a nightmare that wasn't just mental, it was alive, breathing, and aware. With one last surge of courage, I forced myself to step forward, determined to confront it rather than submit. The shadows recoiled slightly, and the whispers changed, almost tasting my defiance. As I stepped closer, the shadow figure began to fragment, splitting into dozens of smaller forms, each one writhing and twisting independently. Faces appeared within the darkness, screaming silently, eyes hollow, mouths moving as if chanting spells I couldn't comprehend. The whispers became intelligible, repeating fragments of my own thoughts, mocking me. You cannot leave. We know you. Your fear feeds us. Panic surged, but I forced myself to breathe, scanning for anything I could use. I noticed the pulsing light, The orange glow seemed connected to the entity, like its heart. If I could disrupt it, perhaps I could force it to retreat. I grabbed a fallen branch, waving it toward the glow, praying instinctively that this would work. The shadow recoiled violently, the whispers spiking into high-pitched screeches, nearly deafening. For a brief moment, the forest itself seemed to falter, the fog thinning, the path behind me shimmering faintly. It was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to escape the Whispering Woods and the entity that ruled them. I struck at the orange glow with the branch, and for a moment, the forest seemed to scream. The shadow forms recoiled violently, twisting and stretching as if in pain, while the whispers escalated into a chaotic chorus of anger and despair. Trees groaned, fog swirling violently, and the ground trembled beneath my feet. My heart pounded as I realized this was my only chance. I had to push forward before the forest regained its control. The shattered shadows surged toward me, but the glow now pulsed rhythmically, almost guiding me. I ran, dodging snaking branches and roots that sought to trip me, the forest clawing at me from all sides. The whispers chased me, growing fainter the farther I moved, yet still clawing at my mind, echoing my doubts and fears. Ahead, I glimpsed a faint outline of the trail I had entered from. Summoning every ounce of courage, I sprinted toward it, ignoring the shadows clawing at my heels. The air felt lighter, less suffocating, and for the first time in hours, I dared to hope I might escape the forest's cruel grasp. I burst through the last of the fog and stumbled onto the old hiking trail, gasping for air, my body trembling from fear and exhaustion. The Whispering Woods loomed behind me, still dark, still menacing. But the orange glow had vanished, and the shadows had retreated into the mist. I didn't stop running until the clearing of the main trail appeared, familiar and safe, or at least as safe as the forest allowed. Even now, years later, I can hear the faint whispers in the quiet of my apartment, their soft, mocking tone reminding me that the forest remembers. It studies, waits, and feeds on fear, patient for the next intruder daring enough to enter. The Whispering Woods aren't just a place, they're alive, aware, and malevolent. I never hiked alone again. Every time I pass near those woods, I feel it. The weight of eyes on me, the pull of the whispers, and the knowledge that the forest will always be there. Waiting, patient, hungry, and eternal. Some places are meant to be left alone, and this is one of them. As our journey through the darkest corners of Pennsylvania comes to an end, we are reminded that terror often hides in places we think are familiar. Small towns, abandoned tracks, or dense, whispering woods. These stories are not legends or mere campfire tales. They are the accounts of ordinary people who encountered the extraordinary, the terrifying, and the inexplicable. From spectral trains hunting at midnight to forests that twist reality itself. From small-town shadows that watch your every move to whispers echoing your deepest fears, Pennsylvania's darkness is alive, patient, and relentless. Each story shows us that fear is not just an emotion. It can be a force, a predator, and sometimes a door to something far worse than we could imagine. If you followed each tale tonight, remember this. The world around us is full of unseen eyes, listening ears, and shadows that move when we are not looking. And in places where civilization thins and darkness reigns, you are never truly alone. Thanks for watching. This was Dark Fears.